Welcome to Aligned Impact, the podcast where conscious leadership meets bold entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Summer Huntington, and each week we dive deep with founders, innovators, and thought leaders who are rewriting the rules of business from the inside out. Here we talk mindset, brand, content, culture, the real stuff behind building a legacy-driven business that doesn't burn you out. No filters, no fluff, just real conversations that inspire aligned action and intentional impact. If you're a visionary leader ready to create with purpose, grow with integrity, and lead with your heart, you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
I've created so many courses, and what happens usually, and that started to happen with that same masterclass, and I know we talked a lot about it, but got a lot more courses. But what happened was it just started to form itself, because once you set out the foundations correctly, it means that you've kind of once you filled the entire spider web and you haven't filled exactly every part, you know that once you fill one in, there has to be one on the other side too. So it's almost mathematically was correct that the movements filled itself out and it all fitted together in the same structure.
A very big warm welcome to Harbert Egberts of the Dutch Flow Academy. He's also known as the Flowing Dutchman. Thank you so much, Harbert, for being here on Aligned Impact Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you.
It's my pleasure, Summer. Very happy to be here.
So I've been watching your work for the longest time. Harbert and I both are in the mace world, and it's not often that I get to dive deep into somebody that's really as passionate as I am about mace. So we're going to nerd out quite a bit. Harbert, take us back to the beginning. What was it about the steel mace that captivated you so deeply and ultimately led to the birth of the Dutch Flow Academy and your work?
Yeah, so as I started out, I had a big life transforming period when it's like 11 years ago, and this really got me out from the university path into a path that was something more with health, mental, physical, philosophical. There was all these interests that came to me. So I really wanted to coach, and so I just thought, what can I do? Well, I was a rowing coach before, I was a guitar coach before, so I was like, I like to coach, so let's do physical coaching. I started my own boot camp. So I had this bicycle card. We have a lot of bicycles in the Netherlands. So I had this bicycle card, and I would load it up, and it would be about maximum 40 to 45 kilos, and after that the wheels would kind of start to turn inwards, and I would like look back when I was cycling, hopefully it won't break this time. So I just didn't have that much space and also a weight limit. So from the first moment I was coaching, I was looking at things that were both powerful and required strength and athleticism without just using your body weight as a tool for outdoor training and outdoor fitness. So I knew about the kettlebell, I knew about the rib trainer, the Bozo ball, these things, and I liked working with them. So I was venturing out on the YouTube world, which I was already connected to, and I found some obscure videos about mace ball training, really old ones, really badly made, where they put like sticks in bowling balls and stuff, and they just started to swing it around. And that was kind of the way that, at least the story of how I got my first mace ball. Apparently there was a Dutch company who was selling them, a CrossFit company, and they had no idea for what to do with it, but they were selling it because other companies were selling it too, and it came from China, so they all just get it from the same manufacturers. And I started training with it, and I remember here in my living room the first swing that I did, and I just immediately connected to that feeling where there was like this pendulum feeling, and I really started to love this concept of training where it's like this on and off, and the better you get technical, the better it starts to feel, and that was just a really amazing feeling. And because I was coaching people in the park, I got to use the next day in my training sessions, and I just started to explore with it, and it was a really fun thing for me to explore with it. And then I got connected to an Instagram account. I was like, well, you got to have an Instagram account when you start up a business. So I started posting about it, and most people would really gravitate towards the mace and club stuff. So that kind of triggered me, where I was like, hey, now I'm the guy with the stick, even though I'm also posting videos about bench presses and squats, because I was also a strength and conditioning coach. And but most people would gravitate towards the mace and club part of the content, and the people in the trainings would also gravitate towards it. And the more I started to play around with it, the more I started to like it, and the more I started to, and that was kind of the moment where it's like, maybe this is something that I need to specialize in, or maybe I should go a little bit deeper into it. So that's kind of the origin story of how everything kind of blew up and how I'm now known as a specialist in this field.
Yeah, well, your work is definitely prolific. You have so many amazing videos, such high quality. And I know you've traveled to India and studied traditional training methods like the Gada, and then I want to make sure I pronounce this right, the Akaras?
Akara.
Akara, okay. What was it like stepping into those ancient, like, holy gyms, and how did that shape the way you teach today?
Yeah, I get a bit of somehow I get goosebumps when you ask that question, because I do remember that first time when I got interested in it. I was planning to do a trip from Nepal to India, which is quite close together, and go all the way down. Just before that, I saw some videos from Paul Okowinski, legend, and he had been there and documented some of these old training places. So the moment I stepped into India, I was asking around these tuk-tuk drivers, Akara, Akara, and not everybody knows about it. Definitely not how to find them specifically. But yeah, Varanasi was apparently the place to go, and that was my first city. So that's how I kind of entered into those places, and just look, I can swing it, I can do this. But then I had these big giant clubs, and I was not able to do anything with them. So there was definitely a lot of new things that came to me when I visited those places. And to come back to your question as to like how has that impacted me, well, I now have a lot of like statues in my house of Hanuman, partly because he has this big gada. But there's interesting rituals that happen in these places, and the more I've investigated it, the more the Western perspective started to morph into a more blended perspective, where I started to realize, even touching the tool before you start it's like a prayer to the tool. It's a prayer to the self, and for me it's also an act of intention and an act of connecting to the tool, which is somehow, of course, the idea behind it, whether you're religious or not. So I liked those practices, and I liked the atmosphere and the fact that there were, most of these people are volunteers. They do it before their day job. They coach people. People come there for free, and the trainers, they train there from 7 to 9 before they go to their day job for 10 hours. And they just do that every day. And if you come there, they just all have big smiles, and they're so helpful, and they really want to, help you, and they're just really excited about it. So that whole perspective, and it's very simple yet so profound. And there's, of course, the history with it too, where it's like this is happening in this way for hundreds of years, perhaps even longer, to 1,000, maybe 2,000 years ago, where they already practiced it in this exact same way, which is something that you then realize where it's just generation on generation on generation on generation. And that is very different than, the modern strength and conditioning world.
Wow. Well, I really appreciate you painting us a picture a bit. As a MACE athlete myself, that's definitely been on my bucket list, is to get over there. But to hear you talk about it, like the ritual, I come from a background of yoga, so to understand a little bit more about the ritual is really insightful. So a couple questions for you about the warrior training that you've experienced when you go out there. A lot of us, here in the US and the Western world are using this tool to kind of embody different, maybe striking patterns or blocking patterns or things that warriors use to condition for battle. Can you speak to the culture of how they use the mace and the akara, the gada and the akara? I hope I'm saying that right.
Akara.
And akara?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, how do they use it, or did they use it in generations past for training and prepping for in the sense of the warrior?
Yeah, from the warrior perspective.
Yeah.
So in the northern part, and you really got to see, they say it's from India, but India is so vast, and every state is basically a different country, so you can't really specify this is from India. It's more like this is from the upper region in that state. It's very local in that way. So most people in the West have been exposed, and the people that have gone to India from the West with this perspective have usually gone to Varanasi. So they got kind of a perspective of how they do it in Varanasi. And that's where they have the giant ones with the bamboo, the river stones inside the bamboo, the giant clubs which they swing like they're milking a buffalo. And that was my initial experience, and that was what I was most interested in, because that is also where the steel mace was inspired from, or the mace bell. Like, they were inspired by these giant bamboo and stone gadas. Those tools are mostly used by wrestlers, so that's kind of the martial art that would be recognized now as one of the main reasons why they would do it. Same with the wooden clubs, the mukdars, or heavy clubs. They would use that as a wrestler to strengthen their shoulders, to strengthen their grip, and also to kind of pull someone over the shoulder. So those really big ones, their leverage is so large because they're so big, that the movement itself is almost like you're swinging someone over the shoulder, because the momentum when it drops just increases, by 3 or 4 times. So if you get up to like a 50, 60, 70 kilo gada, you're talking about a lot of force that's on the body. So learning how to move that and move with it is really beneficial as a wrestler. Now, as I've gone more to the south, and especially last year, I've done a lot of research on it, but I've been there a few times now. And then you really go to like places Kalakatai, and which is in Tamil Nadu, and Kerala, which has a lot of Kalaripayat, which is traditional martial arts, and that's where they use the gada, a smaller one. So that's like 70 centimeters, usually wooden, and they still use it as a martial arts weapon. So they have like different striking points on the head, on the shoulder, and they do a choreographed fight with it. And they use the swinging, so a 360 and the standard pushing movements, as a way to kind of warm up and strengthen for that fight. And the fight they then use in shows and in performances to kind of like showcase their ability and their skill for this martial art. So that's probably the oldest form of the gada, that one, because that's how it's also described in the ancient Mahabharata and Ramayana, which are the ancient scriptures of India, where they, talk about people fighting with gadas. That was probably, that shape, that form was probably how they would fight with it. Not the giant ones with the river stones, because you can't really fight with those. But the lighter ones, the ones made from wood, and then later transformed into metal, that is kind of how they would fight with it. And in the south, they actually still use it in that way.
It's really just fascinating. You know so much about it, and I think our listeners are really going to appreciate the depth of this, so I appreciate you going into that. So you mentioned that what you were discovering in your own practice, I was kind of researching your website a bit, didn't quite align with how you were being taught. So what was missing in the traditional methods, and how did that spark your method of the Dutch flow work?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, when I started training people myself in the park, and I started to work out with it, there was no one around that knew anything about it. So I just had to learn for myself and see some, videos online. And of course, there were people teaching online, but you still kind of have to figure it out for yourself. And the movements that I really got inspired by was basically all the swinging movements. For me, like a front swing was so normal to everything that I was doing, because I was using clubs at the beginning already, and it just all kind of, for me, it kind of connected together. So I wanted more knowledge, wanted more ideas. I wanted to meet some of my, heroes that I saw from the online. Who doesn't want to meet their online heroes? So I wanted to meet Leo, I wanted to meet Rick, I wanted to go to Onit, to the Mecca of the Mace, and all these things when I got to the US. So that's what I did. And I went through the training programs, etc. And I loved it, but I was also missing what I was doing, and I couldn't really translate what I was doing to those programs, to those ideas, which were a lot about lunging. They were a lot about creating how would you say that? A lot of power through the mace, so like gripping it or curling it, like traditional barbell exercises or dumbbell exercises, but now with a mace. Or it was only about swinging and there was nothing else connected to it, like there was no lunges or this. So for me, it was always that combination. And the thing that was central for me was to swing. So that was what I was missing in the Western approaches of the mace, the more structured approaches. And then I also went to India that same year for the first time, and yeah, I didn't find any structure there. That was just pick up this 10 kilogram swing it over the shoulder and hold it there. And that was like kind of the structure of how they would teach it, which was not really structured. I could also not really understand the language, and the translations were not always there. But there were definitely some knowledgeable gurus, but they just think differently, and it wasn't structured like we're used to in the Western systems. So for me, after those trips, I just had to like remove myself of all of that. And that's how I started working on the Mace Masterclass series, which was the second online course that I made. And I just realized I gotta include every movement of the mace, not just have a little setup and then say, okay, now you can create for your own. It was like every movement that you make has to be connected back to a method, a central idea, so that you then can make sense out of your creativity. So you can pull something from the void, but then you can also translate it into something that you can then teach someone else. So that's how I started to work, and for that, central to the Dutch Flow Academy method is the swing. So the 360, whether going in front or behind or over the shoulder or behind the shoulder, that's the central core idea, and that's where we start. And that's how we teach, our instructors or students through online courses, to certifications, whatever it may be, that you work up towards that, because that's the central tenet of the mace. That is what, makes the mace different as a tool, is the ability to create momentum and to use momentum and to use an off lever weight distribution.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So you mentioned one of the key pillars, and I know there's a few more. For those people that are new to your method, can you break down the core pillars of the Dutch Flow method and how it differs from other flow systems, which I think you kind of touched on, but the core pillars of your system?
Yeah. So they are skill, creativity, flow, and then also freedom. So freedom to move. So those are kind of the core principles, which is an overarching idea where you build skill, you learn how to start playing, create. To be able to flow into life, so get into a flow state, but also learn how to use flow in your training to connect moves together, so to speak, so to transition, to be able to then create freedom of movement, which means that whatever you're doing, wherever you're going, you'll be able to do what you want to do with intention. So that goes back to the root of what movement is and should be helping you to do, is that you learn how to move better. Whatever you're using, like the mace is just a tool to get better at movement. So that is the core foundation. What comes after that is the method, which eventually breaks down all the particular parts of the mace to create a foundation that with which you then can use that as your training creation or training inspiration. So, for example, there's a few different positions on the mace. So a swing kind of gets the same name whether you're swinging it from here, here, or here, and that means you have to transition. That means you have to change grips, and all of these things are connected to pivots, lunges, and those are part of the method.
Nice. It sounds like you've really broken it down in a very systematic way, which my brain really appreciates that.
I love doing that.
Yeah, it's like once you have all the recipe, the ingredients, and you study them, that's really, I think, the way we get into flow is to really master the foundations and then be able to put them together in more complex ways with the footwork and the variations. So your Mace Masterclass series is known as the most comprehensive mace course in the world. What can students expect from that course, and who's it designed for?
Yeah, that course was created in I think it was shot in 4 years ago, probably, and it was really the fundamental creation of that method, because I was on a mission, and it started as an idea. I'm just going to make a PDF, and then it became, okay, maybe it's going to be it's gonna be a pretty big PDF, and it's not gonna be. I need videos, so it's like I'm gonna shoot my own videos, and I was like, this course is becoming way too big to just shoot on my own. So now I have to hire a professional team, and it just started to grow and expand as I was working on it. Like I didn't have that vision. I'm gonna create, the biggest course, or I'm creating the most comprehensive one. It just came to be with a simple set that I wanted to break down some of the parts of the foundations into whole movement sections. So there's like in that one, there's nine series total, which is a more traditional part. There's the position 2 and 1, position 2 and 3 part. There's the direction 3, which you can move the mace in different directions. It's just a very elaborate program, and the goal of that program is it's not necessarily to start learning the mace. It's for those who want to know all the ingredients and how to create the best recipe for themselves. So you learn a movement, and then you learn how to connect it into a different direction. You learn how to connect it to a pivot. You learn how to connect it to a lunge, and with every movement, and then you learn how to flow so that you'll use all the inside and outside versions of each movement together in one. And that's like one video of 10 videos per series. So you can kind of understand that this is like an encyclopedia with the same foundations and method for the maze. So I know that people have been working on it for more than a year, and they just go into it and back to it and into it and back to it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, when I first started getting really into mace, probably like year 2 or so, after like 10 years of club swinging, I just started doing improvised flow, where I would do like the lateral lunge into the uppercut, into the, front swing, drop swing, and nothing ever looked symmetrical on either side, which I found a lot of my peers were doing everything like very symmetrical. Curious if you have any insight on symmetrical, like improvised flow, where it's non-choreographed and it's asymmetrical versus symmetrical.
Well, you have choreographed, and then you have free flow. So those are kind of the two different types of flows that we learn. If you're going to learn something, you have to start with choreograph. And choreograph is really about understanding what is the first movement you do, and you learn how to connect that movement and repeat that movement all ways, all directions. And then you'll learn the second one, and you learn to eventually combine those two together until you can learn how to then transition and move between different movements. And I feel that you need that work before you can really start to dive deep into free flow. Like everybody can touch a mace and just start swinging it around. But there's a level 2 real flow where eventually you can break it down and you see that every movement is precise, it's intentional, and yet it's still free. So when the technical side, so the skill part of the exercise, is integrated within free flow, that's when you reach real mastery. And if you can then sync it to tempo and connect it to a certain level of synchronicity with all the movements, then we're talking about real mastery. And I feel like one has to start with the choreograph. And if you're an instructor, if you start to teach a system, it has to be connected to how do we learn a movement. And if you want to connect movements together, that's great, but it's not a necessary thing. It's just when you start to flow the movements together and weave them together, that's when eventually free flow can come, because you now have so much, and that's kind of what the masterclass series is about. You have this umbrella, you have these skills, and then you start to learn all these different transitions between them, and eventually, and I saw it at that time as a big spider web, because you're going to fill in some of those holes of the spider web with certain movements. And the more holes you fill, the clearer the entire spiderweb becomes. And once you know the structures of the spiderweb, which is what the masterclass was about, those structures, those big lines, then every movement you learn starts to fall into place for you in the spiderweb. And once you understand the entire spiderweb, then free flow it comes to you instantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm getting flashbacks of, doing dance performance with like the music and the tempo, like slowing things down, speeding things up. And I would have dreams about steel mace when I was first getting into it. I don't know if you experienced this, where you would just my brain would just like put together the spider web as I was sleeping. I was like working out flows in my sleep. Did you ever have any sort of experience like that where it just comes to...
I've created so many courses, and what happens usually, and that started to happen with that same masterclass, and I know we talked a lot about it, but got a lot more courses. But what happened was it just started to form itself, because once you set out the foundations correctly, it means that you've kind of once you filled the entire spider web and you haven't filled exactly every part, you know that once you fill one in, there has to be one on the other side too. So it's almost mathematically was correct that the movements filled itself out and it all fitted together in the same structure. And that's when I kind of knew I hit rock bottom with, or not rock bottom, but I hit like the golden chest of like what I was searching, is that everything that I then created or found out, because I was always like learning how to create with the maze since I started the Friday Flow series, which was kind of a creative project where I was launching a new movement every week. So I was always like creating with the maze. And that after creating the series, everything that I created from then forward just got a place into the spiderweb. Like it immediately connected, instead of it being some random thing like, oh, I got a new movement. It was more like, oh yeah, that makes sense because that fits in here.
Mm-hmm. Love it. So Dutch Flow Academy, you've trained international instructors who are spreading your method across the world. Tell me a bit about your instructor team, or like what qualities you're looking for in people that you want to make into, the DFA instructors.
That's like one of the things that I'm so proud of. I started that 3 years ago. I knew from the start that at some point, because there was nobody around here, so I knew like I want to do this at some point. Waited very long with it. Waited till I really was like certain that I got some certainty that this, once I write down the program, it's not just going to change every month because I find out something new. It has to be there and still make sense after I teach it 10 times, instead of me having to rewrite it because I realized that something doesn't fit. So I waited quite a long time to start doing something like this. But we just last weekend we did another level 1 certification, and I had 2 instructors helping me, and they were both level 2 instructors by now. And one of them, Santiago, has been teaching the maze now all over the world, and it's just really, really incredible how it's not just the maze work that has changed, but they changed as a person. They changed because they're open for personal development. They changed because they wanted to learn, and they changed because they found some essence, some truth in the work that they were doing and the things that we were moving through with the certification, that then inspired them to like transform their lives. And the way that I see them interact and teach the others as we're going through the certification, it's just like it's wow. So that's something that I'm like right now in the process of, where I'm realizing that it has a ripple effect, and because I'm not putting out like 1,000 instructors a year, it's quite exclusive, and we go through this in a very intimate way in these certifications. It's almost like a retreat form. It just builds a really tight community of people that are really enthusiastic about the tool, but also about what we teach and how to teach it. And when you and that's something I had too. And Santiago started to teach like a workshop every weekend. He started to teach in Spain and then in South America, and like every time he got the same reaction to the method and to the ideas of the maze, even to people that have been doing it for years. And that's just for me something like really incredible, where I'm like, okay, it was good to wait to bring it out, and now we can actually dive deeper with this. So I don't necessarily have things that people need to qualify for before they want to become an instructor. It's there's pre-learning with the instructor course. You have to go through certain online courses, so you have a certain idea of the maze. Most people will have done some things already when they're ready to become an instructor. But some people just want to do it because they want to learn more about it. They want to go into depth with it, or they want to teach a family member. They want to teach a friend. So all of those are welcome to the certification. Once we go to the level 2 and we go deeper, then of course there has to be a certain amount of skill connected to a certain amount of experience before you really are able to connect to that level. But that also means that then the level 2 is just like this. Last year we did the first one. It's just epic. It's bringing people together that are on the same page, that have gone through the same system. They're so enthusiastic. They've got experience, and then we just fly off. And that for me, that's really something exciting, because it means that we're not just we're diving deeper. Like the maze is a fantastic tool for body, development and mind development. And at the same time, if we touch even deeper, it connects to the root, where we all are looking for something to, in not necessarily improve, but to keep growing as a person. And if you can use the mace as a vehicle in that process, then I'm really, really excited and really happy that we were able to do that.
Absolutely. I've definitely noticed that with the, instructors coming through the steel mace vinyasa courses. It's like you see a person before they start with mace, and then you see them a year later and 2 years later, and it's like, it's personal development work. And I'm just always floored at our students and people. I'm really big too. I think it sounds like you are too, on like expansion of the method and iteration on it. And so like some people say, oh, you can't go teach a workshop after you become a certified instructor. But I'm like, go teach a workshop, like teach more workshops, make up your own workshops. Do you have any like rules or regulations around your certified instructors for what they can teach?
Well, the level 1 is geared towards group training, and the level 2 is geared towards workshops. So that's kind of what we start to open up that field, at least teach about how you would do that. I mean, there have been level 1 instructors who are teaching, or they had already been teaching workshops, so they connect the method to something they would do. Once they become level 2, then we will also support them as a company with their projects. So we can promote their workshops. We can do things that we also bring that out. So that's kind of how we would do like an official workshop. So I wouldn't necessarily say they wouldn't be able to. Like, the main thing is, after a certification, start teaching, right? You can't teach someone the experience in the certification. What you can give somebody is a really straight and understandable framework with which they can then do something that is, obviously very complex and can be multifaceted, and everybody has a different idea and opinion on it, but they can just use this system to start working people up in their skill and progression. And that's really helpful even before you start teaching. So, I mean, experience as a teacher is the most important, but a really good framework can actually elevate everything once you understand that to a deeper degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the differentiation between group training and workshop, because I think there's so much benefit in staying with your students and being in that group training environment where you see people progress over time and you see like new people coming in. So yeah, I love that you guys are doing, and it sounds like you're supporting your instructors to continue to grow their body of work too, which is awesome. So I want to touch on just a couple more questions. Your documentary work. So I know you've documented your journey through writing, filmmaking. How is the documentary sort of program? Like, what does that look like for you? Is it coming out soon? Like, can you give any sort of intel on this?
Okay, so I've been filming a lot in India. I've been there, for 8 years now, every year. So, and sometimes even two times a year. So it's becoming this thing that I'm, being recognized on the street, which is a really weird thing. But it also has put me into a position that I really understand the scope of the country and where things are being taught, which, like, Indians in their own country usually don't really understand in that way because they're not traveling around. And sometimes it's also a bit weird because there's like different castes, or there's different, some of these wrestling cultures are really closed, so they don't really allow people in. Like, it's a closed community of people that really are dedicating themselves to training. So somehow I'm this really weird, unique combination of things where I'm able to get into all of this and to basically, I'm kind of like a bridge. I'm this like golden retriever who comes in and be like, "Oh, I love what you're doing, tell me more." and that's kind of how I've been able to, get on film almost all of the interesting gurus that I know about or that I've found, and then also let them share their story. And then try to connect that together from that holistic perspective of like, what are we trying to search for, and not necessarily have one person who's really who's saying, this is the truth, and I'm only talking to you when you believe that this is at least 100,000 years old, and like there's different elements to like some are really tight, some are really open, some have knowledge and some have less knowledge. So for me to be able to go there and understand from the wrestling perspective more and understand all the facets of that, understand it from an Akara perspective, understand it from a religious part, a spiritual part, what the underlying training philosophy is, how women are also involved in training now and used to be. So those are the segments that we now have for the documentary. And it will be so a 6-7 part series of like 45 minutes for 3 episodes. Really professionally done. We went there with a big camera and like all these things. So this is the first time I'm really producing something professional. So we have to, hopefully we'll get in contact with producers, with people that are into like these bigger companies, and the goal is to really bring this to a larger audience, not just like my Instagram audience or my YouTube audience, but to kind of move into a different stage where we can share something that has been really hidden. When I came there the first time, there was no online videos about it, except for the one that I saw from Paul, which was like obscure and, it's and really into a corner. So most people, and even Indians, were not aware of that this was still happening. And they knew from their grandfather that they used to swing clubs. They knew about it. They'd never done it themselves. They'd never seen a place like that in person. So that was part of the reason why I really dove into this, because I'm not just sharing this to Western people. I'm actually in some way giving back the practice to the Indians, where they're now starting to embrace it again. And now it's becoming this trend. After COVID, it suddenly, some of the videos just went so completely viral, and people are now so like dedicated to it. There's companies in India now that sell these wooden tools, and they bring it to these people. There's coaches now that start sharing it. That just wasn't happening at all. So for me, that documentary is kind of a way to, seal that, kind of collect what's happening now, and also start to open this up to the general public without you having to be interested in physical training or the niche that we're in,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this to come out. So I'll definitely keep my ears peeled. And make sure I'm following all the spots. So my final question for you before we close, there's a powerful blend of artistry and athleticism in your work. Anyone that's seen his Instagram, he is very embodied athlete, very strong, but very graceful as well. What does freedom through flow mean to you personally, and why do you believe it's transformational for others to find this freedom through flow?
Yeah, somehow I was always connected to when I started training after rowing, because I had kind of a back issue. I really started to work out my back for the first time, and then I kind of got into barbell training and dumbbell training, and kind of moved into kettlebell training. And from the moment that I started to do the outdoor trainings with others, it's always been for me a combination between, you have to be able to move fluidly and be really intentional with your movement. You have to have some type of conditioning. You have to get your heart rate up, and it's also really important to do, for me personally, heavier weight training. So I've always done that as myself. So that makes me able to go into an Indian gym and try all the big stone lifts and heavy log lifts that they're doing, and deadlift gadas that are 110 kilos, and like all these things make me I've always wanted to have that ability to be able to do everything. So I flow a lot with the tools, with the clubs and the maces, but I also want to be able to do at least 12 pull-ups without having to rest without that. So those have always been my cornerstones for movement. Yes, work on your strength and how your body develops, and then learn to be really fluid with your movement. So you can become bigger as a person, but if it doesn't mean that you suddenly become less able to move. So for me personally, the last 2 years I've been really diving deep into yoga. So you know what it is. I've become a yoga teacher, and it's part of my daily routine. I've gone to hot yoga every day for like almost a year, and it's just, and at the same time I've never given up the other routines that I've built up. where I do at least 2 times a week strength training, and I do heavy mace or club training, and I do lighter flow movement. So all of that connected together, like I'm kind of a movement freak for myself. I hope that makes sense.
It definitely makes sense. I mean, we teach the 4-day wave to find flow. So you just named all of the aspects. So it's like the strength piece, the complexity, the mobility only days. And I just also love hearing that you're going to yoga every single day. That's awesome. We got to get you. Have you done any loaded asana where you just basically put like a smaller mace, maybe like 4-kilo mace in your yoga poses? Have you tried that out yet?
A little bit. I not like in the yin yoga way where you do it for 5 minutes long. But small, yeah.
Nice,
Well,
nice.
it's with the flow part that there's some of the lunges, some of the movements can be really easily connected to yoga postures, and I like to work with that. I do not have done it a lot. I haven't done it a lot.
Yeah, that's something that I'm very curious to go over to India and see, like, are they using the mace in this way, or is that just completely unique to the Western world? So we'll find out. You've inspired me to get over there. So Harbert, where can we find your work, your websites, your YouTube, and your like Instagram? I guess those are the main platforms, but where can we find your work?
Yeah, it's either the Flowing Dutchman, so that's the.flowing.dutchman on Instagram and the Flowing Dutchman on YouTube. There's dutchflowacademy.com, dutchflowacademy.com, where I've got all the courses. So we got 5 categories: mace flow, gada flow, heavy clubs, and light clubs, and all of them are connected to the same foundation, so that I talked about before, the same method. They're all connected to all these different tools. We also got tools, so we also got Dutch Flow Academy maces, gadas.
That is beautiful. Okay, those of you guys listening, we got to describe this. So he just pulled out this golden mace. It looks very like Hanuman's mace with a wooden handle and a golden ball part. That's beautiful. That's okay, tell us about that. What is this? This just came out. I have not seen this. I got to get one. Where can I get one?
Yeah, you can get one on dutchflowacademy.com. We're building the. Like it all started with the courses, then the certifications came, and now we're coming up with tools, because I realized that it's really difficult for people to get the right tools, and I'm one of the most qualified people to I know what feels good. So I'm getting at least tools connected to all of the categories that we have. So we've come up with light clubs. You can see them here. Also, and eventually we'll come up with a heavy club and heavy clubs. We've got a gada now, we've got a mace, and they've all got some meaning to them. So on this one, for example, we've got all the movements from the Dutch Flow Academy instructor certification connected on it. So you can see all the icons. So those are all the different parts of it. So it's a special, they're like special tools, especially if you've gone through our system. It will really start to make sense, and it will connect together. But they're all also, hopefully one of, in my opinion, the most beautiful and unique ones on the market at the moment. And especially this golden one, I'm like, this for me, this is really special, because yes, the mace was inspired by the gada, but mainly the gada from Varanasi, which doesn't look like an original gada at all. It's just a really big stone connected to a stick. Most Indians will say a gada is actually a wooden mace with a little head and a thicker weight to hold it and to strike with it, which usually is connected to Hanuman. And you see Hanuman with this mace, and this gada is an inspiration. The top of the gada is an inspiration by the form of that original gada. Yet it also has a wooden handle, which makes it swing, and you can use it the same way as a steel mace. So it's a really interesting connection, where I'm connecting the old gada with the relatively newer gada and the Varanasi gada together. And yeah, so if you're into this style of training with the mace, where it's like a meter or 110 centimeters, then this is the closest you can get to the original gada with it. So to be creative in the way and to think about these projects, that's really what makes them, like, what makes it tick for me. Not necessarily if I'm, this is not a mass product where I'm earning so much markup because it's coming from China. It's handmade, it's hand painted, it's shipped from Germany. So it's like, yeah, it's
beautiful.
it's a passion project for people that are really into like special things. They want to have an icon in their home that also is really nice to look at.
Very nice. Well, thank you so much, Harbert, for being on the podcast, and I'm excited to see where your work goes and very excited for the documentary.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and I love to connect further with you. It's been real good to finally meet and connect.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Aligned Impact. I'm truly grateful to have you here in this growing community of leaders, innovators, and conscious change makers. Check the show notes for all the links and resources we mentioned today, and you can explore more of my work and programs over at FlowShala.com or connect with me on social media at Summer Huntington and YouTube as well for behind the scenes movement inspiration and business tips. Stay tuned for more episodes of Aligned Impact that inspire you to lead with intention, get empowered, and create aligned impact in your life and your community.